Gran Turismo has returned, and this past week Sony unleashed a massive demo of its latest installment, Gran Turismo Sport, allowing players to sample a wide variety of events and features just prior to release. This also means that we're finally given the chance to look closely at a near final presentation, and first impressions are very positive indeed. Today then we're going to focus on the PlayStation 4 Pro experience, primarily using its high resolution mode, which just happens to be checkerboarded to 1800p with a native 4K user interface. The results aren't quite as crisp as some other PS4 Pro titles or Forza 7 on Xbox One X, but it's still a gorgeous looking game in motion, and the Pro showcases GT Sport at its best. Now, it's no secret that the PlayStation 3 installments often felt lacking in key areas, with often unsteady performance and disappointing visual flaws, but you could see something greater beneath the surface. Gran Turismo Sport is the game that fully realizes the vision started in those last two titles. GT Sport offers an incredible level of detail in every facet of its presentation. The move to PlayStation 4 means that materials, textures, and lighting are all amped up beyond what was previously possible. By making the leap to physically based rendering, the game features more realistic surfaces and objects throughout its environments and across the entire lineup of cars. Textures are sharper and more realistic as a result, even up close. GT retains a sense of scale that no other sim racer can quite match. The way its environments stretch out into the distance create the illusion of a much larger world. Lighting is overhauled as well, enabling many more dramatic moments in the game, while shadow resolution, while not quite optimal, is hugely improved over previous entries. Every car in the game then is loaded with detail this time. The smallest bits and bobs are rendered smoothly both in and out of gameplay, and the improved lighting and shading allow each one to blend more realistically with the environment. GT Sport's roster of cars is reduced compared to previous entries, but every car included features a super high quality premium model, complete with remarkably high quality interiors. Everything from the plastics used on the top of the dashboard to the leather stitching around the steering wheels and seats is captured with the utmost realism, and it looks excellent. But more than anything else, it's the support for high dynamic range that left us most impressed. Since first experiencing HDR last year, it's become one of our favorite visual features in games. Some games do it quite well indeed, but not all implementations are created equal, and many fall short. Gran Turismo, however, has always been a series created to push the boundaries of technology, so it's no surprise that HDR plays a significant role in its presentation. Which means if you have a compatible display or method for watching YouTube in HDR, or have just joined our video service via Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, you should be watching this video in HDR mode. Everything here was captured to showcase the incredible range made possible when using HDR with GT Sport. But don't worry, if it's not an option, YouTube does automatically tone map the video for those not using HDR displays, but you will definitely lose some of the spectacle. Now, the first thing I want to mention here is the HDR setup process itself. GT Sport is in a league of its own, offering users full control over their HDR experience. When enabling HDR, a configuration page allows you to match the HDR10 output to your television to get the best picture. For instance, if you're using an LG display with the reduced brightness while using HDR game mode, GT Sport allows you to overcome this entirely. More games could learn from this implementation. Now, as for the presentation itself, there are several elements which come together to define it. It begins with the rendering of the sky. The increased color depth and brightness of HDR allow the sunlight and clouds to exhibit a level of brightness closer to reality. After all, even on a cloudy day, the sky produces a level of brightness that exceeds what a digital display can produce. But HDR at least allows the game to get much closer than a standard display. Then there are the head and tail lights featured on the cars themselves. The contrast of high-intensity lights with the environment works brilliantly here again, contributing to the sense of realism. The headlights on each car are intricately modeled, with every LED element and bulb being fully represented and modeled, with light emanating from the individual pieces in a fashion that is incredibly realistic. GT Sport is big on contrast, no doubt, and nowhere is it best demonstrated than here. Night racing in the stadium is similarly impressive, with high-intensity lights strewn around the track contrasting against the deep, dark night sky. The combination of the two enables a striking presentation that successfully duplicates the feeling of being in a brightly lit stadium at night. And this is what HDR is all about, being able to combine high-intensity portions of the image with shadowy regions. The mix of the two is incredible to behold, and few games do it better. So if you're looking for a game to showcase what you can do with HDR, Gran Turismo Sport is an excellent choice. So looking at the visuals as a whole, the end results are incredibly vibrant and sharp. That's not to say there aren't issues. There are plenty of nitpicks one could fire at the game. For instance, if you look closely, things like the billboard trees and lack of detail in certain parts of the background do stick out, but during gameplay, it's absolutely beautiful. When moving over to things like replays, however, the post-effects pipeline is also hugely improved here, enabling more realistic replays with very natural motion blur, featuring a huge number of samples. This is true of the various cinematic segments featured throughout the game as well. So, the high-resolution